USA, Australia, Malaysia, and obtained advanced training in the areas of forest hydrology and water management. Dr. Purandara has published more than 150 research papers in various international and national journals, national and international proceedings, and has edited 2 books, namely Forest Hydrology and Water Quality. And he has published a number of technical reports through the National Institute of Hydrology Publications Wing. The number is more than about 50. Dr. Purandara has guided more than 60 students for their MTech degree under VTO, and also 3 PhD students are awarded the PhD degree in the area of hydrology and water resource engineering. He has guided a number of BE geological engineering students of University of Petroleum, Dehradun, and MSc students for their various university degrees, including Central University of Karnataka. He was a visiting faculty in the Department of Water and Land Management during 2011 to 2014 in Vishveshwaraya Technological University, and also for various engineering colleges. Dr. Purandara is an able administrator as well, and he has acted as a Board of Studies member of Calicut University, Goa University, and Anna University, Chennai. He has also acted as a PhD committee member of IIT Mumbai, NIT Surathkal, CUSAT Kochi, Andhra University, Visakhapatnam. He has also organized a number of national and international courses, workshops, conferences, and seminars to spread the awareness of knowledge in the field of hydrology. He has acted as a secretary and vice chairman of Mining Engineers Association of India, Belagavi chapter since 2011. He is the member of Climate Cell, National Institute of Hydrology, Roorkee, and expert member of District Environmental Committee for Mining Approvals. Dr. Purandara has many awards for his credit. To his credit, notable ones include Cash Award of Rs 5,000 from National Institute of Hydrology, instituted by Ministry of Water Resources for his contribution in the area of forest hydrology in the year 2000. He is also he also has the credit of Veena Roonwal Award 2015, instituted by Mining Engineers Association of India, Hyderabad, for his contribution to water management in mining areas. Sir, on behalf of the Department of Civil Engineering, East West Institute of Technology, a hearty welcome, and I request you to kindly enlighten us with your vast experience and research activities. Over to you, sir. Sir, I request you to share the presentation.
Sir?
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear now? Hello?
Yes, sir. Hear you, sir.
Can you hear?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
So shall we start with?
Yes, sir, you can start the presentation. You can share the presentation and start the...
Okay. Share screen.
It is not showing.
Advanced.
There are only these two options.
Share. Files. I should tell her.
Yes, like.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
There is some problem in sharing that slides. Just I'm trying. Just 1 minute. Yeah.
If it is, I can share the slides. I have kept it ready, sir.
So they can share it.
Yeah. It's not coming. Okay. Let them share.
I'll share it, sir.
Yeah. I mean, when you try. Okay. For participants.
No, this is like everybody can
Yeah.
they shared it.
Okay. Okay, very good morning to all participants. I take this opportunity to convey my deep sense of gratitude to the authorities of East West College of Engineering, particularly the Department of Civil Engineering, head of the Civil Engineering Department, all faculty, and my particular this one to Srimati Sridevi, who was my student also and who has referred my name for this gesture. Thank you, Sridevi, for all these things. So we will start with, can you hear? Everyone can hear me now? Voices.
Yes,
Hello?
Yes,
Can
sir.
you hear? Can you hear now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So shall we start with? So we are basically at the peak of our pandemic. And the topic today is we are talking about the application of remote sensing on water resources management. And as you know, the present situation itself shows you that how remote sensing is useful. See, we are connected with, we are on a virtual meet and we are sharing all the documents or sharing our resources through the network. So you can imagine about the remote sensing technique which initiated in the past, and it is not a very highly sophisticated technology in the beginning. You can remember, I think as a student, you will be remember about the letters, how you send. You see, you can see in my first slide, the kites, the platforms, basically the platforms of remote sensing were balloons. Very much as a student community, you are very much aware and about the kites. You know how the kites are flown and the pigeons. If you remember the story of Nala and all, you may be remembering how the letters used to be sent during the past, our epic period. So this is a basic background of the remote sensing if you take. Then what next we have, remote sensing is a big technology when it started in 1909 actually. Wilbur Wright was first to take photos from an aeroplane. So earlier, like pigeon, they used to put a camera, they tie the camera on the neck of the pigeons or any birds, strengthened birds, and they used to allow it to fly, so that they will take the photographs, take the information of unaccessible areas. Later on, in 1909 only, Wilbur Wright was forced to take photos from an aeroplane. So that is how the technology of aerial photography has started. And this aerial photography was basically the beginning was only for the war purpose. It was for the defense purposes, basically it started. Then when it came to 1960, only our first Earth orbiting weather satellites, as our technology improved in 1960s, we have gone for the first Earth orbiting weather satellite. Then spy satellites, we call it as a pandemic corona, but that was named in the past as a spy satellite corona. Okay, Landsat 1972, that was in non-military satellite, was launched during my childhood, that is in 1972. None of you may be remembering now, maybe knowing it, not remembering, you have not even born during that time. Then advanced very high resolution started, and we started working basically from my remote sensing work I started from 1988 onwards, when your first advanced high resolution satellites were done. Okay. So these satellites, this is just a brief history of remote sensing. And then why we are, as a water resources engineers or as a civil engineer, as you consider yourself, then why this remote sensing, how we can utilize this? See, everywhere the technology, whether we use it in a real sense or we want to misuse it, the technology has its own limitations, the knowledge has its own applicability. So remote sensing come with the purpose, see better. The first purpose was how to see the unknowns. You don't know, you cannot see it. That is why I have given a photograph of a microscope. When you are unable to see a particular organism, a virus, we are looking it through the microscope. So why? We are unable to see it. We want a better resolution of that organism. Then we are going for your E. coli, F. coli, whatever tests you do. That is through the microscope you do it. So the basic purpose of see better. So in the remote sensing or our water resources management, the first purpose was the things which we cannot do see. Water resources is not applicable to a small area or to a laboratory. But a vast area, we are working on the earth resources management we are looking for. So we should have a better understanding of the nature, the earth, which we cannot otherwise see very casually. We cannot go to all places. We cannot collect all information. So the importance of remote sensing was recognized during 1979 and in the 1988s that our IRS satellites started. So see to better and know better about the things. See, something is unknown. You don't know X, Y, Z about it, but you want to know much better than, or you need the information of that, but you are unable to. You want some information from Himalayas, but you cannot climb Himalayas, but you need some information, whether there are trees or not. Suppose you want to know whether what is the rock type in Himalayas, you cannot go and search there, but the remote sensing satellites will tell you the history or will give you the undisturbed information on that. That is know better. The third one is use better. So once you see, many things we know, many things we understand, but many things we do not know how it is to be used. So we should have a tendency to use the information in a right sense at the right time for a right with a right approach. So use it better. And this is for the human development, human resources development, and overall development of the society. That is why to make it your life better. So the remote sensing, to make you understand the things which you are unable to otherwise get information. It started giving you the information in the early days, and then we started using for better understanding of the nature, better understanding of the hydrological processes, water resources, better management purposes. So that is the basic objective of your remote sensing. Okay. So some of the details I have shared in my slides with regard to the remote sensing satellite 1A, 1B, 1C, where in my early days in 1988, initially when I started working on remote sensing, we used to get these kind of IRS 1B, 1C, list 1, list 2, list 3 data later on, all these things. So you can see, in the list data, you can see the wavelengths under which we have divided that satellites classification, list 1 data, list 2 data. So which was the swath width, resolution, different resolution, and in the how we utilized it for our practical purposes. Next. So water and remote sensing. Now we are talking about basically water. So what is water and how you are using and how we can use for water resources? That is a very important issue, or today our title is with regard to the water resources. So you see, many of the things we can take measurements in the case of water resources. Basic data like our rainfall, evaporation, such things can be recorded. Many things for many areas it is possible, but it may not be possible every place. So in situ measurement of various hydrologic parameters like precipitation, water depth, temperature, salinity. See, when you learn the hydrology, because it is a earth resources projects what we are dealing, so we need a set of data, which all these data is impossible to collect manually. Many times it can be a representative value we can collect, but we cannot distribute uniformly over the area. So we should have a sort of understanding how this information can be gathered through other means. That is where our remote sensing has come into picture, because in situ observation, for example, okay, rainfall you can measure for a particular area, particular purpose you can measure. But what about water surface area, about the streams? We don't know from where it originated, from where it is flowing, what are the tributaries coming, what are the distributaries going out of that. So such informations are completely not available. That is why the resources of our remote sensing, water remote sensing has become. Then legs, the water bodies, number of water bodies, how many water bodies? If you take Bangalore, today you have the list of water bodies available in Bangalore, because thanks to our satellites, so many our water bodies are measured, are monitored through the remote sensing technology and remote sensing techniques. Then with regard to the reservoir, you see, none of the today reservoir sedimentation, a big difficult task to control. So we should have the assessment of the reservoir, how much reservoir capacity is reduced over a period. In such cases, today we are with the technology of remote sensing helps, how it helps. I will come to that with some case studies which we did. So reservoir sedimentation, then with regard to the marine resources, oceans and other ocean currents, let it be ocean currents or ocean flows, all these things are important to monitor. Then water constituents, you see water quality. How many water bodies we can measure? Is it possible to measure all the parameters, all the water quality characteristics by using a regular manual monitoring? It is possible. It is impossible. That is why where our remote sensing technology gives a signal of certain things, yes, we can have certain information with regard to the quality. May not be exactly what we wanted, but at least we will have a basic information on water quality. I will also, with my own study, I will give an example on how the water quality is assessed through the remote sensing technique. Then water surface temperature, you know that I will come how the temperature helps you to understand the remote sensing technology. These are what I am dealing today is the basic for with an intention of only for the students, not for the experts or who are already well versed with remote sensing. So I am giving a basic information. Snow surface area. Actually, our National Institute of Hydrology, we are conducting a lot of investigations in the Himalayan region. Our one unit is working continuously at the Himalayan area. So there it is not accessible. Very number of places are accessible. So we use this remote sensing information, snow melt studies, etc. How the remote sensing technology today it has helped. Then surface area, precipitation, water vapor, such various parameters can be now monitored through the remote sensing technology. Now let me go to the, what is this remote sensing technology? It reflects. See, it is an energy, the resource which we have. I have an energy with me. So with that energy, I can take 10 kgs, 20 kgs, 30 kgs. If 10 kgs, if I take, what will happen? If I take 20 kgs, what is the things going to happen on my health or body? Similarly, this is, we call it as an electromagnetic spectrum. So the light which is coming from that is an energy, light from the sun, which when it interacts, for example, when the sunlight falls on us only, you can see the head like mine, how it will reflect, or when you have a black hair, how it will reflect. So the bodily identification. So these depends on the 4 processes basically. That is reflection, absorption, transmission, and emission. So you can imagine, you can consider, so these 4 processes are controlling the entire technology of our remote sensing. So how much is reflected, how much energy is absorbed, how much is transmitted, this is the estimate we are looking into. Now, the objects are immaterial for us. How much energy it absorbed, how much energy it transmitted, how much energy it is emitted. So this is the spectrum. I think it is not available. You can in your slides. But EM spectrum, we call it as within energy with the wavelength where the visible range is coming, then the reflection, reflected IR infrared, then the thermal infrared. Nowadays, many studies we are carrying out with thermal infrared ray, then microwaves, remote sensing. These are all today's very capabilities of the various capabilities of the remote sensing technology. Next one. Then, so I told you these 4 processes are important. That is, majority of the radiation incident upon is reflected, but either is absorbed, is not reflected. So you can understand that the radiation coming when it falls on the water, most of them are not reflected. Why? Because it is absorbed or it is transmitted back. So that is why the process, in the process of water resources, our attempt is to tell about the and more. So the longer visible wavelengths and near infrared radiation are absorbed more by water than that is why the color, you may be knowing about the things that why the color of water is blue. So this is just because of the absorption or the different wavelengths of the sunlight, which gives the color to the water body blue, or even any water body or anything, the color is transmitted through that. Then the water looks blue-green due to strong reflectance at the shorter wavelength. Actually, it is reflected at the shorter wavelengths. That is why we are getting a different color. Or next one. Yeah. Reflectance property are a function of the water. And so now you can understand, you see, a body of water has certain constituents. Let us say whether it is a suspended sediment, or when you talk about the reservoir sedimentation, one of the characteristics we can observe is through the suspension. Or when you take the water quality parameters, you cannot get what is a pH of water just by observing the remote sensing images. So we should relate it, and those things are possible when you know the how the water, so the transmission, it is directly, the reflectance properties are a function of both your organic and, because the content, how much is within the water body is reflected. It depends upon the concentration and the reflectance of that. So that is why our most of the chlorophyll investigations in the water, many cases, I will come to my study when I explain you how the chlorophyll or the, where I use the suspended sediment for a lake water, so lake body, where how we can understand the, how we can apply the remote sensing technique to that. So it will not, when you talk about water quality, if somebody asks you, what is, sir, by remote sensing, you tell me what is the sodium content of water, we are unable to tell that. But at the same time, by relating it, because a lot of research is required, lot of information is required, not from a single water body, we may not be able to tell you the exactly what is the quantified concentration of a particular element, but for we can do it by collecting more and more information of on more and more water bodies under different water or under different environmental conditions, so that we will be able to tell you the water quality aspects of most of the water bodies. What is happening is we are unable to, everywhere we cannot go and take measurements, but at least some baseline information is required. In such cases, our remote sensing technology, how I will come to that, how we can do it like. The temperature variations, again, temperature, you see the right from the sunlight, morning to evening, if you take the readings, definitely we can get the impact of or the observation variations in your remote sensing technique about the temperature variations. And similarly, when you take the water quality, you see temperature variation, if you can observe, you can directly somewhere you can relate it to dissolved oxygen concentration. You can relate it to the other pollutants, industrial pollutants, from where the pollutants are coming, incoming pollutants, source of incoming pollutants, etc. can be observed by a close study of that. Here I have given a picture on what is the clear blue color, that is a where you see the blue water here, but when you take the green water, you can see the chlorophyll content. So your wavelength, there is a, you see the first one is at 450, you are getting the peak. Then you are getting a green water where you are coming down with the wavelength. If you take at a different wavelength, how it behaves. So this is the pattern with which we are working on the, what is the chlorophyll content of, because in any water body, especially on the standing water body, when we work on the, different processes of hydraulic processes as well as water quality processes, we come across such situations where we can relate it with the different characteristics of the water. Yeah. Then what are the different things, the different resolutions in, because for all these purpose, we should have a resolution. What is the resolution? It depends upon the resolution. So that is classified into 4 groups here. That is one spectral, that is represented by number of bands. Most of you must be aware about it, how the different bands are classified in the remote sensing. So that is called a number of bands, 6 or 7 bands, which we classify, and we relate it with the band with the different signatures of the resources. Then we go to the radiometric, where the sensitivity of sensor to detect differences in signal strength. You see, that is very important. So radiometric correction or radiometric, when you talk about the resolution, that gives you the sensitivity of the sensor, whether this particular sensor will detect that particular cause. Sometimes some of the sensitivity, some of the sensor may not be able to give you the proper signature of that body. We go wrong in that. That's why how much sensitive or the sensor acts to detect. Also, we should use the sensors properly, and which sensor will give you what characteristics is very. So signal strength depends upon the strength of the signal strength on the sensors. Then you talk about the spatial, and spatial, you know, nowadays most of you are well aware about the pixels, the ability of distinguish small objects. Means if you have some objects, that's why today also in GIS, etc., you are working on the pixel size. So each pixel size with different capacities or different sizes will tell you the spatial ability or the spatial. So resolution is one of the important, and frequency of revisit time. This is with respect to the temporal variation is, so I have explained in each slide, I have explained what it is talked about. So in each cases, you can, for example, spectral resolution, if you take, the finer the spectral, the narrower is the wavelength. So you see the ability of a sensor to record electromagnetic energy at narrow wavelength intervals. Otherwise, what happens if you get a broader spectrum, you may not be able to understand it. So we should have a system where we can get a narrow wavelength intervals. The finer, the better. Then hyperspectral scanners. Nowadays, we are going for the hyperspectral remote sensing. So hyperspectral remote sensing also very important part now for various other. Here I have explained each band how it is applicable, 1, 5, 4, 2, because which are significant through this one I have summarized there. And here this photograph, next one, it is not here. You can see that photo. All these things, how the panchromatic figures like spectral resolution with a photograph, multispectral and hyperspectral, how it is different from one another with reference to your wavelengths, and these things I have explained how it looked like. Now, shall I come to the spectral characteristics of water? So we were talking about the energy disseminated when it falls on the earth body. So it has 3 portions now. That is one surface reflectance, second bottom reflectance, and the third one is volume reflectance. So when you estimate any property of water with reference to remote sensing, these 3 characteristics are very important. We should look for what is the surface, because from the water body, how the light is reflected, that is one of the things. Then when it reaches the bottom, up to what bottom it reaches, and from the bottom how it reflects, and then the volume of water. So these 3 things only will give you the entire picture of water body. So we should have the surface reflectance, we should have the bottom reflectance, and volume reflectance characteristic should be observed for deep greater than 2 meters. If you take clear water bodies, volume reflectance is very low. For deep is more than 2 meters. So you won't get the proper indication. So the reflectance is very low. So you can say that what is the depth of that. Here I have given the equations like the total radiance. So water surface, subsurface, volumetric and bottom radiance, how it is calculated. You see, from the sun and sky, that is the electromagnetic energy coming from, this is divided into 4 components, including from that is the atmosphere, then the surface, volumetric and bottom reflectance. So the total radiance of sun, the total radiance is equal to the sum of all these things. Okay. So that is how we are going to you can see here how the reflectance varies from the reflectance, transmittance and absorbance, how it plays at what interval of wavelength it is distributed. So this is how. Then you take the concentration. Just for example, I have put here the density of population. Actually, when I was doing some studies on the reservoir water quality during my early days in 90s, where we have done this total solid concentration. I think Tawa reservoir of Madhya Pradesh, I was working with my senior. So that time we have worked out how the total solids or TDS or such parameters can be estimated with the help of such remote sensing technique. So here you can relatively, that color clearly distributes how the relatively that blue color and red color, 2 figures you can see how the highly turbid water looks like. You see, this is the how you can differentiate. So how the water is, whether it is a turbid water, whether it is a clear water. So the clear water, you are getting a red color curve showing that the water is clear, whereas the blue color, because of the absorbance and all those characteristics, you are getting a blue color. The next, I have given a list of, I think these are all available in all your literature. Green and yellow light, what is the remote sensing ranges, means wavelength ranges, micrometers. Next one. Can go to. So scattering, next one, please. Yeah. So now monitoring the surface extent of water bodies, the best region for discriminating land from water. This is very important. These are all whatever the primary information you should have, that is between near infrared and mid infrared. That is 0.74 to 2.5 micrometer. So our concentration as a water resources person, we will be concentrating more on the infrared wavelengths between 0.74 and 2. This is called as a range from near infrared to mid infrared region. That classification in my earlier slide I have given. Next one. So when you come to the water quality parameters, with the example I will be dealing with that, characteristic radiant energy are a function of the concentration of pure water. So what is the concentration? You see, this is a comparison method. Actually, remote sensing is not as such, it is not a technique like that. But here, you see, when you have a pure water, suppose let us say, we have a remote sensing satellite data of a pure water or our RO water. So what is the characteristic? What is the radiant energy when you have a system with all RO water, let us say? Then you are comparing with inorganic suspended minerals or organic chlorophyll, dissolved organic material, because all this has the concentration is directly applicable to your energy transmission, energy reflectance, transmission, absorption properties. That is how the remote sensing properties are used in water quality. Still, it is not very, very common. Very lot of limitations are still we face in remote sensing for using while using water quality investigations. But it is a boon. Naturally, we can say that it is a boon in the years to come. But more and more, I think youngsters like you should work on the science of that side. Science part of that, how we can apply for a different, and we should develop different number of curves which are related to how, if the concentration from this X to Y, what is the range we are going to get? What is the curve we are going to get? And how our remote sensing, the wavelength variations will be there. So such studies are required. So this is another is, next we are coming to the radiometric resolution. So if you come to the radiometric resolution, you see the number of brightness level which the sensor can record. You can see, I have given a photograph. Yeah, here you can see this is a small your garment store where these are actually I took it from my friend. You can see how the brightness values place. You see, by looking from the distance itself, you can differentiate which one you prefer. By look, you can just directly you can see the case. So you have a photograph with you at your in your TV or your laptop now. So by looking into this, you can directly order what kind of dress you want or what color of dress you want to fetch. So your radiometric characteristics of that tells you the characteristic. How the brightness level of that is resolved. Okay. Then the third one, what I was the spatial resolution, which that I already told you, it is about are composed of a greater number of pixels, and you will have the images having higher spatial resolution are composed with a greater number of pixels than those of lower spatial. So you will have a different set of, if you want greater number, you have a larger picture, you need a greater resources. Then you come to the temporal resolution, that is we call it the fourth one. So there are 4 spectral, spatial, radiometric and temporal resolution. That is where it depends upon the repetition of your satellites. How repeatedly you are getting the time interval between 2 successive time limits. So if you take the satellites, whether it is 28 days, whether it is 10 days, 5 days, 4 days, this kind of information is also very important. Then we go to I will give you a brief, I think image processing. What is image processing? One of the most important part of remote sensing is with respect to the image processing. So in the case of image processing, we have, what is the next? So you can see what is the different bands here, because all these images, you have a set of images, you want to use it for different purposes to your interpretation. So these are represented by, actually we call it as a brightness factor or a digital number. The brightness factor we also represent it by a digital numbers corresponding to different radians. That's what I have shown you. So digital image processing technique have 4 important stages. That is, we call it as image rectification and resolution, image enhancement, classification, and transformation. So these 4 processes, because you got some images from the earlier, we used to get the this is because we used to correct it, then we used to process it through the different chemical processes. Now you see, you are getting this one image, then we are correcting it like image rectification. We have to correct it to what is exactly the condition of what is that object. Then image enhancement, sometimes we have to go for the image enhancement, classification, and transformation. Next is geometric correction. So you go to the first. Yeah, previous. Rectification. Then what are the correction? It should be applied when you are rectifying the images. Next one. So each processes. So we should have the corrections when you want to identify a particular object. Everything in the image we may not be getting as we require. So we should apply some of the techniques are used. These are the corrections we should apply to get the actual element to be identified. So what are the processes? The geometric correction, we call it as radiometric correction and geometric restoration. So these processes, you can see what you are talking about in the rectification. What you mean by geometric correction? For raw image rectification or multi-date images, it depends upon whether you want to have a raw image you want to rectify, or for multi-date images registration, what kind of processes we use. Geometrically corrected image, next one. So this is the transformation. So you want to transform it, coordinates should be transformed. I have given the equations like x and y coordinates with the examples I have shown. A0 plus A1x, because these are with respect to the x and y coordinates. So you have to, that next figure you will understand. Here I have given an example where you have your A, B, and this, how the corrections can be. You see the earlier your image was just a tilted image you had. I wanted a clear image of that area. For that I applied the geometric correction based on the coordinates. You can see the different coordinate systems, x and y, and then you can see it is a corrected image is also shown. It is a superimposed on the a tilted. So now your actual image is after correction you are getting a corrected image. Next one. So all these things possible, ground control points. We have the ground GCP. We call it as a ground control points. You must be very familiar with nowadays when you are using the GIS, etc. All our observations are with respect to the ground control points. So the ground control points, image coordinates, I rows and j columns. So we are classifying into rows and columns. That is why in the previous figure you might have seen where we have shown the rows and columns and the map coordinates. So in both the cases, you should have what is the coordinate of the maps for which you are correcting, and all the image coordinates. So this is how you can see that is an example I have given taken from the literature. You can see that how the GCP is corrected with a proper image. Here a unrectified image is Landsat image is shown, and here this one. A corrected or rectified image is shown. So rectified and unrectified, you can see the difference based on because with these 3 points plays your ground control points plays a major role where it places, you see here, how though it is 16, this is the different 3 set of points we have considered. That is actually I took from the literature, not mine, but it is, we regularly do it with regard to the correction of GCPs. So these are the way how you can see the unrectified and rectified. You see the differences, you can see how, because even a small variation will tell you the will make you go wrong with this is about the TM bands, thematic map bands of 4. Okay, so this is how the corrections are, the process I have explained, what are the resampling methods or how the digital corrections are made, how the all details I have explained in the next slide. If you want, you can go through that. So this is how you see, for example, this is the x-axis, the distance is measured, and from this we have converted into the process is explained in the previous slide, where you can see that the distance between the 2.4. So this is applicable only with respect to, you can see that you can get the coordinates from the ground control points with reference to the ground control points and x and y coordinates. So this x dash y coordinates, we have changed it to xy, and your actual object is shown in a different position. So this is with reference to, basically we work on the DN, we call it as a DN number, digital number. Actually DN is a digital number. So all your explanation in remote sensing technique, we work on the DN. So digital number, what is the number varying from 0 to 255? That number pixel in the output matrix is assigned as the DN of the closest pixel. So simple computation maintain the next one. Yeah. So this is how our digital numbers we have given. I have given for an example taken from a different literature. So you can see how the digital number addresses the each image position, the original numbers, then how it is can be changed to the next, whichever signature we would like to take. Then bilinear interpolation, we call it as a distance weighted average of DN values. So ultimately, all our references are based on DN. All our measurements are measured through or by the DN values, which is also known as a brightness, actually brightness number, it is a intensity. So that values uses DN values of the different here, that example. That is why the different DN values with the reference to that we have carried next, I think it is a. Yeah. So that is the one of the method. Now, when you come to the, as I told you, radiometric corrections are mainly dependent on what? Actually, I told you the intensity, the sensitivity of that, the sensor. So the intensity. So that is illumination condition, atmospheric condition because brightness of sunlight, then view angle, in which angle you are observing. So changes in the instrument response, how the instrument receives it. So the if a light is emitted or transmitted, how it is received from the instrument. So that is how your radiometric correction. This is how the radiometric correction, what is the formula is. Next you can see that DN divided by sine of the sun elevation angle. I have given that. Then you need a correction, the atmospheric correction, because sunlight received from the atmosphere. So a atmospheric correction will be applied. This is the way how we are using the radiometric corrections for in the remote sensing techniques. Then geometric restoration, there are 3 different types that we use in the restoration of that. That is stripping, line drop, and bit errors. These are the 3 methods we use. So here you can see the stripping of that. You see the gray scales adjustment to correct the strips. So the gray color is considered, then out how it is compared, and then you can eliminate malfunction of a detector. This is are all happening because of the detector. I told you in the case of the sensors, it creates a problem. So we should go for the stripping or line drop methods. This is very, nowadays it is still more sophisticated things are there. Here we call it as many of you might have even observed this salt and pepper. Normally we use in remote sensing effect due to random error and all those things. So very common these are but here today, since we have all the software facilities, etc., such errors, etc., are very easily you can eliminate by doing the analysis, proper analysis. So this is how now the rectified Landsat imagery, again I have mosaicing, because you are clubbing the 2 images. So you want to club the 2 images. You see in 2 images you are getting 2 different pictures. So if you, this is a technique now, a mosaicing technique we are using in remote sensing regularly. So you can see that now the two different FCCs or different photographs are available, images are available. Then we want to mosaic it to a region because two are identified in two different ways. So you know that how, which is the water body, that one. So you want to mosaic these two images and get the true picture of that. That is what here it is shown. Then image enhancement, we call it as a enhancement process. So we told about the rectification methods. Now what is a image enhancement? So this enhancement is depending on the digital algorithms are available now. These enhancement techniques are basically now all are doing software, but here what the different care we should about the spatial filtering. We call it as a spatial filtering. The digital enhancement increase the separability between the interested classes. Why we are going for that? Because two things you want to identify, two water bodies you want to identify separately, or then you can go for the enhancement so that you can get more clear picture of that. For that we have a contrast enhancement and linear contrast. These are the two different techniques. Original, that first one is contrast. Objective of contrast and is to expand the narrow dynamic range of gray values. You can see that linear contrast stretch. You can see that that can be here now with the color brightness values. The next one. So this is the actually process how you can do the process. It is a different technique. So when you are doing through the your softwares, etc., this is a process involved in that. But in the software, you can easily do it. Next. Then non-linear enhancement, that is logarithmic, that is where we have a histogram of input image does not show a uniform distribution. So we may not get a uniform distribution. Then logarithmic contrast we are using, that is based on the, is a very much useful for non-linear contrast. So linear case, it is one type we have already explained, I have explained you. So now the nonlinear contrast enhancement with the equation, this A log of Xij. Then what is spatial filtering? You see the spatial filters are designed to highlight or suppress specific features in an image based on their spatial frequency. Highlight, suppress specific features. You see every feature is not important to you. You want to have a specific, you are focusing on a specific feature or a signature. So that time we go for the spatial filters. A type of filters we use, we can concentrate only on that particular object, which object you are interested. So that is where we are using the specific spatial filters. That technique I explain in the next slide. I think I have given that how it is done, like low pass filters. We call it as a, there are, this is the method what we follow. You see in the left side corner, you can have it that explain how the process is classified image. You are focusing and filtering. You see, you go to the previous slide. So here high pass filter and we go for the low pass previous. Low pass filter and sharpen blurred images. So we have the both low pass filters and high pass filters. So the basic purpose of this is to filter out some of the images which are not of your interest, which can be blurred images. In the high pass filters, we go for the blurred images, sharpen blurred images used to map high spatial frequency features. There you can edge detection, etc. There is a facility where you can make that particular object into sharpened edges and all those things. And image classification, then we have a process called image classification. Why we have to classify the images? So in case of our landscapes, in case of our land use, basically most of the hydrological studies depends upon your land use pattern. Many studies you can find, many of the literature are with regard to the forest, agriculture, water, such things. So there we need to classify the images, a landscape. So there you need to classify the images, what type of image it is. So in such cases, we should classification scheme, or we call it as a structure of classes. So you see here how the derived from to IRS list 3 image, 2 references I am giving here, examples of a not of Indian conditions outer abroad. So image classification we have shown, even in Indian, we will come to the next one. So these two are given because the two types of forest, whether it is a deciduous forest, coniferous forest, such differences we can mark out based on the image classification. So there are different number of, finite number of specified classes. A broad classification I have given because of the timing, I think. All things yeah. So now so classification, when we talk about the classification, we have two types, very common. I think most of you are well aware. We go for a supervised classification and unsupervised classification. Normally, most of the time we go for the supervised when you have a training sites, because here you have an option. You have to give the computer or the software what type of land it is. A training site should be given, which will be interpreted, and based on that signature, that will identify the supervised classification. You see, these are the different processes of stage by stage. I have given analyst training areas for each informational class. Then algorithm identify signature. I think that then classify all pixels, how many pixels are having that particular characteristics. Then we can identify what is the specific characteristics. Then that is a informational class map. Next one. Then unsupervised classification. Here the software is taking the decision on behalf of you. In the supervised, we have an option, but here algorithm clusters the data and finite inherent, because based on the intensity, based on the information it received, all the classify the pixels into a different clusters, spectral, then it prepares a spectral class map, and then analyst labels the clusters. That is how the next figure, I think, next. Yeah. Here you can see how do you do it, like properties. Here you see the band 1, what is the characteristics of band 1, band 2 with respect to this. So vegetation and soil. Then you go to the next one. In the vegetation, pixels would have exactly the same spectral signature. So we can identify based on the spectral signature with the different bands, with respect to different bands. In some bands, some of the properties may not be found, cannot be identified sometimes. So that is how we have to adopt the technology based on your supervised and unsupervised classification. Each land use or any agriculture pattern, cropping pattern, even etc., are very, very useful information you can collect through this kind of analysis you do. So the significance of the remote sensing is there. Lot of technology is adopted in the remote sensing technique. It is not just a remote sensing photograph, but there are lot of information, but that information we should be able to gather in a proper, sensible manner. The interpretation should be sensible. You see, remote sensing does not give you exclusively, no, this is correct. This is 100%. But unless you are attached to that and with your information and the remote sensing, we can do wonders. So there are a lot of technology which involves in the case of remote sensing, where we have to go for our own methodology. We have to adopt our methodology. Then we should find out, yes, this is the identified. Otherwise, for a forest, you may give it as agriculture land. For agriculture land, you may be misled with a barren land. So such things will happen. So it should be always, it should be in continuation with the knowledge you have with the field and combined with the remote sensing technology. Then only the success of the remote sensing technology will be in multiples. Otherwise, it is very limited. So you should have the ground truth information. You should have the technical information. You should have the science behind it. And the fourth one is your remote sensing. So all this, if you combine or integrate the technology, then the strategy of remote sensing is very, very useful. All the procedures I have explained, I need not explain you in the next one. Yeah, this is how. So what is the strategies to be adopted in the case of supervised and unsupervised? We impose, that is, I already explained you, we impose our property, but in the case of unsupervised, the software will decide, or the computer will decide what kind of stretches we have to take. Next one. So this is how a example is shown here. You see, I have taken an example of conifer area. This is a supervised classification where you can see that known water area, known deciduous area. So I prepared these are given to that. These are the position of all this. This is a water area. This is a conifer forest. This is a known deciduous area. So this is later on converted to a mean spectral signatures. So you can see the different spectral signature. You see, just previous one. Yeah. Next. Here. Yeah, you can see that the spectral signature from a conifer, it changed to a water, how the curve is shown. Then again, there is a difference, no difference is seen between a deciduous area and a conifer area, because it is a forest. So here our technology, again, we have to make it understand how this can be differentiated now, whether it is a deciduous forest or it is a coniferous forest. So similarly, this is a area where it is given that there our practical knowledge goes to that. Yeah, this is a deciduous region. So this is a deciduous forest area. So the basic difference we have found that yes, it is marked between the differences with the water and the forests. Next. So then supervised, what are the common classifiers we use? Parallel piped, we call it as a minimum distance to mean, maximum likelihood. These are the three methods. So there are very much a scientific methodology is involved in classifying the different signatures. It is not just a photograph. You see, basically it is a photograph. What is remote sensing? Nothing else. It is a photograph. But from the single photograph, can we tell all the history? But it is a scientifically proved technology is used here. Mathematical and your basic physics equations are used to identify each properties. Next one. So that is how you see that figure. Yeah, you can bring that next one. Yeah, yeah. Here you can see how this maximum likelihood classifier, how the mean signatures are relative reflectance with the different bands. Means color bands I am talking about. You can see that how the classification is done based on how the methodology is adopted to differentiate between the different signatures based on the technique. Yeah. So what are the most sophisticated? Supervised classification requires strong training set. So what is the limitation of your, normally nowadays everywhere you can see that supervised classification is or unsupervised. Most of the time people may go for the unsupervised because we need not bother much on that. Computer does it. So, but in the case of supervised classification, unless you are an expert, you have sufficient information with regard to the training sites, training areas, with regard to the signatures, then it will not work. So that is why supervised classification always will be more accurate because you have sufficient information with you which you are comparing. In the case of unsupervised classification, we do not have much information with us, but we are going to how it can be done, like the software will take depending upon the different pixel sizes and all those things, and it develops rather than defining training sets and carrying a piece of space, different spaces, dimensional spaces it uses, and the separations technique, etc. are used. So here you can see how the unsupervised classification is shown. You see the cluster 3 here, the same thing you are seeing. There are 3 categories. You can see the same thing. Cluster 1 is the water body. Then you are seeing that, you see, that is a cluster 2 where the forest is there. Then again you are seeing that another cluster, yellow color, that one. So it is your third part. So here what it has done, it is clustered into 6 groups. So based on the clusters, you see, based on the clusters, you see how it has marked like that. Water from this, then water, the same thing it has taken. From here it started classifying it, whether it is a conifer, hardwood, something sort of that. Then it is differentiated into 3 regions or whatever classification we have done. In the case of supervised classification, again is represented by the unsupervised classification. Okay. So the takes maximum advantage of, in the case of unsupervised, one of the pros or the positive point is spectral variability in an image, because how much variation is there in the intensity or the spectra that is taken into consideration. So you can get as many as changes with respect to spectral variability. But one of the constraint in that is maximally separable cluster in spectral space may not match our perception of the, sometimes it may not, sometimes it may. So it may not match in many of the cases sometimes whether exactly what you meant is this or whether it is true or not, because you don't have your own information on that. But based on the spectral variability, we are interpreting it as a particular signature. Next one. So image transformation, it is another technique. Sorry to disturb you. Can I know how many minutes more I can take like? Hello? Hello? There. Okay.
Sir, maximum 15 minutes more, sir.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Image transformation, then you can see how the images are transformed into different structures, especially when we are using this normalized NDVI. Many of the people, maybe today's research in remote sensing people or even agriculture for us, all these things, how this difference, normalized difference vegetation index, NDVI, and SAVI, soil adjusted vegetation index. These two we are normally in all hydrological studies or even nowadays hydrological models. These parameters are very significant, which can be easily identified, estimated through the remote sensing techniques. Next, image fusion, multispectral, all explanation I have given. Only now I'll try to give you how the images are clubbed and how the multispectral high resolution images are used. Before I proceed to the just 5 or 10 minutes, I'll explain you about the next one. Hydrological information, how we are again using it for the identification of the sites. You see, now whatever I explained is with respect to what is happening or what can be done using remote sensing technique. Now what I am going to say, how we are using it, like on what way. For example, you want to identify a gauge site or you wanted to measure a gauge site, the situation of the gauge site at a particular place. So hydrologically, I have a gauge site at X station. So what is the condition today? So we may be receiving the data, but we do not know the conditions when there is a flooding occurs, then there is a there are any other processes, hydrological processes because of which our gauge sites are affected. Such information, in such cases, water level observation also we can take from the remote sensing technique, because at least you will get a picture of that. Then area capacity relation in reservoir sedimentation, it is very, very significantly used in many of the reservoir capacity curves. Actually, we have done about more than 20 reservoirs in which I was involved by using the remote sensing techniques. So reservoir sedimentation, it is a very, very, nowadays, I think most of the studies as far as reservoir is concerned is done through the remote sensing technique, but I will come to what are the limitations and all those things. Then flood monitoring, naturally, as a water resources engineer, all of you must be very much interested in how the monitoring of the flood can be done. And it is not a very big technology in that. So remote sensing for a satellite, because with the reputations and with the, nowadays even our drone, etc. can be used for such studies. But as a remote sensing with the available technology, it is very much useful. Then what is I explained then flood monitoring. Then in groundwater technology, we are using groundwater applicability. So here you can see what is the water stage. You see, always when you develop a rainfall runoff relationship, basically we look for what is the runoff estimate for a particular area. So many of the basins, as a hydrologist, I faced during my last 30-35 years of my experience in the area of hydrology, we lack lot of data. And we lack also the information with respect to a particular basin. So in all the basins, it may not be sometimes possible to establish a gauge and discharge relations to establish gauge and discharge, but you can identify a proper sites based on the remote sensing applications and identify this is the particular site. And once it is identified, even monitoring can be, at least you can judge from where the water level, that figure, that's what I have shown there. You can see that, you see how the gauging and the readings are, because automatic water, this is fixed there. But at the meanwhile, you can also get, you see the very clearly you can identify the water level. So each water level tells you what is the water level there. That is why the markings also you can see whether you can, what is the water level at that particular. So you can verify it also. So that is how the gauge discharge site identification as well as gauge discharge measurement. Brahmaputra, where most of the period we face the flooding, Ganga plains, all these areas, many times we may not be able to properly go and do the analysis that time. Definitely it helps the remote sensing. Then you come to the groundwater part of that. You see many of the groundwater studies nowadays for groundwater occurrence in the sense identification of sites, availability, bore point, and all the groundwater availability studies are also can be. This is an example which we have done for the Ralegaon Siddhi. You might have all must be aware of the our Anna Hazare, or you may be trying to recollect his memory now. So in that case, you can see the Ralegaon Siddhi. We have identified some of the structures, and we estimated what is the groundwater availability based on the class after classifying all the land use type. Then what is the lineament structures? All these things have been classified. I have done another Doodh Ganga basin also by using remote sensing, and I used the drastic technique there for identification or the weightages of that area. Then this is an example from the Bangladesh. You see, we are doing a regular analysis of flood zoning maps, not basically from the remote sensing, but a comparison with the remote sensing. So here, I think Dr. Venkatesh might have already explained to you about the flood hazards and flood zoning, etc. So there, our remote sensing technique is another cross check for the whether our results are coinciding with what we have predicted or what we have understood. The next one. So this is one of the study which I carried out for the in the Ghataprabha sub-basin, where we identified the different crops. So this was basically from a tough job identifying different crops, and that different crops have been like different fodder, maize and sugarcane. Basically two classification we took other than fallow land and the fodder grasses. Okay, this is in Lokpavani command. We have carried out a study where we have marked the growth of sugarcane and paddy differentiation. So using the remote sensing technique, that culturable command area of that during 98, 99, that is a old time. This much technology was not there that time. So with a great difficulty we have to end. These are all field checked and verified, and then only we have compared with the results what we did. Now, as you said, there are a lot of techniques you can be used here. Also, we planning water harvesting structures based on the all. You see, I have given the different methods. What are the different stages of measurements, different stages of estimates, or how to do the different structures to identify the water harvesting structures. We normally do based on the remote sensing techniques. Use that where the structures can be, because the entire hydrological processes are involved in that. So the entire geomorphology, groundwater approach, all these things should be considered, lineament delineation, all this, then only we can go for the water harvesting structures. So the third one, this is for the group. This is one of my study which I have demarcated into 3 regions. High groundwater potential areas, that is based on the lineaments and the rock types. I have classified into 3 regions. This is Doodh River Basin, a part of the Bhima Basin in Maharashtra. So this is, I think 2005 or 6, I have completed this study. Next one. So the next about the water quality part. If you come to the water quality part, I think it is very, time is very limited. So I'll just explain you. These are explanation is given here. I will show you only one of my study which I have carried out for Vembanad Lake in Kerala. So these are the approach I used for this. These are the sites I identified for the water quality monitoring in Kerala. It is in the Kerala Vembanad Kayal. It is one of the hotspot of environment. You might have, many of you might be aware of that. So this is how the gauge sites are identified, and this is compared. This is the remote sensing images we were used. So, and temperature variation. Then I have gone for the indexing, like various derivative indices were developed. It is published in the international journal or international book also. So where the thematic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that bands have been classified and compared with the suspended sediment. So these techniques, anybody at any time you require, you are welcome. So these are the way how we do the remote sensing applications. Then you can see this is with regard to the, I wanted reservoir sedimentation. So here we have, I have given an example of Vaigai Reservoir. As I told you, CWC has, Central Water Commission has assigned about 28 reservoirs for estimation of reservoir sedimentation. So as a part of it, we have done this study, not myself alone. It is a group of people. We have grouped scientists from NIH, have carried out about 28. This is about your radiometer, spectroradiometer observations. So here you can see here what we are actually doing in the, it requires to explain, lot of time is required, but you can see that you see water spread area. Basically, we are looking into the water spread area. From the water spread area between two different seasons, different periods of your interest can be studied by using the remote sensing. That is how we have estimated. These are the methods. I have given all the explanation, explain which kind of reservoir. You can see this Vaigai Reservoir. I have only one reservoir I have done this. These are the images which we have selected and classified this. This is how the methodology multi-data has been used with a broad this one, and we estimated what is the, you can see based on the water spread area, etc. We have estimated what is the sedimentation rate of that basin. All details are given in my slides. Due to lack of time, I'll just give you the estimated sedimentation rate. Like this is how we have classified our rate of sedimentation. We calculated as 0.61 million cubic meter per year. 0.61. This is how it is. So it depends on the lot of other parameters. So the verification is ongoing, whether it is true, or because we are comparing with various other reservoirs, whether the values are, we have to compare with the what kind of soils, where from it is coming. All those investigations are required. So these based on different set of, you see, capacity, area capacity curves, and because we should check with the echo sounding technique also. What is the present level of, because in all the reservoirs, we cannot run the echo sounding studies. So only with the certain asset factor, we will do echo sounding techniques for some reservoirs and compare with the remote sensing technology, then come with a value of sedimentation rate. So this is how we are doing it. Okay. So I think with this broad exposure, I think I'll close my talk with this. I thank all my colleagues at East West College of Engineering. Thank you, sir, for giving me an opportunity to talk to you all. And it is good for people like me. Thank you. Thank you very much. Anything you want to discuss or this one, you are welcome. I am not, presently I'm not dealing with remote sensing for the last few years, but still any things are there, you can ask.
Thank you very much, sir. It was a very informative session. There are a couple of questions from our audience.
Yes, sir, please.
Question is from Muralidhar R.
Yeah.
Question is, can the same geostationary satellite be used for different purposes?
Yeah, I think it is possible. It is possible. Geostationary satellites, no, it can be used for various purposes. This is what I understood. So I think you can use it.
And another question is ground truth and validation very, very important for all remote sensing works?
Definitely, sir. Definitely. That's why I told you the advantage of supervised when we take the supervised classification, at least some of the basic information with regard to the field conditions. That's why we should be area wise, we can update it. Everywhere we may not get all the information on the ground truth information, but we should be able to generalize a signature based on certain field characteristics. For example, if you have a water body, that particular water body have what kind of signatures it represent should be known at a different levels of understanding. Then only remote sensing technique is very apt to use, and it is more very informative. It will be more informative and more valid. So the other part of the people also will believe. Otherwise, by taking just a photograph, can you tell all these things? So especially in case of water quality, I have given an example. I carried out the study, I collected all the information from the field, then I validated it with the remote sensing data. Actually, I did more work on the field, then I compared with that. Similarly, in reservoir sedimentation, what happens in the reservoir sedimentation, we do not have that much facilities. So we are really depending on the water spread area. Based on the different timings, water spread area is taken, and based on that, we are using the sedimentation rate, but it should be done with the help of the also measurement of the sediment data.
Yeah. There are many more questions, sir. Due to paucity of time,
Yeah.
we'll send the questions to your email link. And there is one question from this thing. How can we determine the capacity of the reservoir when nearby sloping ground?
How nearby?
Sloping ground.
I could not, the sloping, nearby sloping ground.
Like how, if there is a sloping ground nearby, what would be, how do we determine the capacity of the reservoir?
No, you see, reservoir is designed already. The design capacity is already available with the reservoirs are already designed, and then based on the design only they do it. No. So there is no question of slope and this it comes. I don't exactly what he require. Sorry for that.
I will just coordinate in the email regarding this.
Yes, please.
The next question is, what is the difference between remote sensing and GIS?
Absolutely. Yeah, it is a very simple answer, I think. You see, in the case of remote sensing, what we are doing, we are collecting the information. And that is converted into your geo information system. You are converting through your GIS platform. So in one place, you are getting acquiring the data through remote sensing, and you are transforming it into a different formats as per your requirement. That is the difference between these two.
I think there are some more questions, sir, which I'll be sending it to you via.
Yeah, please, you are welcome.
Many thank you messages for you for a beautiful set of, beautiful collection of all the data and all. And there from one last question, sir. Remote sensing is human interpretation. What will be the error percentage of error usually?
Yeah, this is, you see, remote sensing, as I said, already informed, remote sensing is an estimate. It is not a corrected picture. It is an estimate. So your estimate depends upon how confident you are with the work which you are carrying out, for which you are utilizing it. So that is why field information is very important. The expertise is very important. Technology can be used by anybody. Expertise cannot be used by everybody. So the expertise is required with regard to the particular process you are involved, and then only that accuracy depends. And in some of the cases, accuracy goes up to 85-90% as far as my observation is concerned. But if you take water quality, etc., it is around 70-80%. My observation is about 70-80% correction. It is required. Is reliable. But I mean,
Thank you very much, sir. For a very informative session. Over to you, Mamta.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much for your time and
Thank
thank you for sharing your immense knowledge with all the participants and us. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, we will move forward towards the vote of thanks for this 1 week webinar program. Now, I would like to welcome Dr. M.S. Nagaraj Gupta, sir, HOD, Head Department of Civil Engineering, EWIT, Dr. Radhika K.N., Associate Professor, Department of Civil Engineering. I would like to request Dr. M.S. Nagaraj Gupta, sir, to talk few words on the program. Sir, over to you, sir.
Hello, am I audible, madam?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Good afternoon, one and all present this session. See, it is my privilege to thank one and all who made this program a grand success. At the outset, I thank all the participants who have attended for the complete sessions. That is from 13th to 18th. All sessions you have attended and made this program a grand success. Thank you all. And see, I would like to thank all the speakers, starting from Dr. Mahesh Prabhu sir, who was the speaker of the first day. He spoke on failures in the buildings and what are all the care should be taken while designing the buildings or fire accidents, all those things he has spoken. Second day, this Mudaraju sir has spoken on how to stabilize the soil for various purposes by using locally available materials. Third day, Dr. Venkatesh sir from the this National Institute of Hydrology spoke on flood and flood mapping. How to see now today Purandara sir has spoken on this remote sensing. The same technique is used in this flood mapping and how it should be done. Sir has given enlightened us with the his knowledge, vast knowledge he has shared with us. See how to map the floods. And next fourth day, Dr. Pradeep sir has explained in detail how to see what is the effect of COVID-19 on our profession. Okay? How to behave, how we have to behave during this COVID-19. Okay, and how to avoid by the attack of that COVID-19 is beautifully explained. And next is see, yesterday Anjaneyappa sir has spoken on recent practices in highway engineering. What are all the materials to be used and what are all the recent technology used in construction of highways, okay? And all those how the recycled materials will be used in this construction of highways. Okay? He has beautifully explained. And today sir has explained on remote sensing and GIS in water resources management. Okay, so using this GIS, we can explain, use how the how this remote sensing technique and GIS techniques is used in water resources management. Okay, sir has explained in detail. Okay, we are very much thankful to all these speakers, and I'm very much thankful to all the audience. And I would like to thank our management, Srimati Rashmi Ravikiran Madam, Chairman of our East-West Group of Institutions, Sri Tejas Ravikiran Sir, who is the Secretary of our East-West Group of Institutions, Dr. Purushottam Sir, who is the Director of Admissions in our East-West Group of Institutions. I would like to thank Dr. L.R. Manjunath, who is the Chairman of Indian Concrete Institute. We are running this program in association with Indian Concrete Institute. I would like to thank Dr. R.L. Ramesh, who is the Secretary of Indian Concrete Institute, and see, for all our programs, our management supports greatly, and I would like to thank our management, and our principals are always encourages us in conducting this type of programs. I would like to thank our beloved principal, Dr. K. Chennakeshavalu sir, and see, without help of my colleagues, I could not arrange this type of programs. I would like to thank all my colleagues who have made this program a grand success. And I would like to thank all my colleagues. And once again, I thank all the participants who made this program a grand success. And I hope all the participants have gained some knowledge from the various speakers we have arranged. I thank you one and all.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Dr. Radhika Kane to deliver the vote of thanks for the day. Ma'am, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. I deem it a great honor and privilege to propose the vote of thanks on this occasion. We had an extremely useful week, as our HOD was just explaining. At the outset, we are very thankful to all the speakers who have discussed the correct challenges, their trends and remedies in the various aspects of civil engineering. This week has sprouted new ideas among the audience. We, the entire fraternity of East West Institute of Technology, thank our management for supporting us to conduct various activities. We are also thankful to our beloved principal for his words of encouragement and guidance. Thanks are also due to our HOD, who is the backbone support for all of us, for his stewardship, support, vision, and commitment towards work. I owe special thanks to all the participants from various organizations for attending the webinar and making this a grand success. Thanks are due to Indian Concrete Institute for being a part of every program we do, and we look forward for similar associationships in the future also. I would also like to thank my fellow colleagues for their active participation and support for the successful completion of this webinar. Special thanks to the convener, Ms. Mamata, and co-convener, Ms. Kumada, for their tireless efforts in conducting the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And I would like to extend this vote of thanks for 2 more minutes. Will not be taking much of your time. I'm Mamta, Assistant Professor, Department of Civil Engineering, and also the Organizing Secretary of this webinar program. Would like to extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the honorable speakers who blessed us with their presence and took out valuable time of your busy schedule. I also wish to express my gratitude to our principal, Dr. K. Chennakeshavalu, for providing encouragement and support. I'm very grateful to Dr. M.S. Nagaraj Gupta, Head Department of Civil Engineering, EWIT, for giving us the opportunity to organize this webinar. As no program can become successful with a single person, so I extend my big thanks to Ms. Kumuda V, also one of the organizing secretary of the webinar program, for extreme support, without whom it would have been difficult to make this a successful program. I would also like to thank the advisory committee, Dr. Shashekar TR, Dr. Radhika Kane, Mrs. Ashwini G, Mrs. Geeta K, Mr. Arun Kumar HR, Ms. Shilpa BS, Mr. Harish C, and Mrs. Sridevi R. And last but not the least, I would also like to thank all the faculties of Department of Civil Engineering, EWIT, for their extreme support and contribution to make this program very successful. And I would also like to thank all the participants to participate effectively for the 1-week webinar program on challenges in civil engineering. Thank you so much. And I would like to, and I would expect your cooperation and look forward for the same cooperation for future programs that we'll be organizing from EWIT Department of Civil Engineering. Thank you once again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. And the feedback link will be shared in the chat box now. So you all can submit the feedback for today's session. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.